Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Gaming Telecom video we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up over the past 24 or so hours. We're going to be starting things out with Sony's PlayStation 5, specifically the release date, which is being touted to be 2020, at least according to one analyst. After all, rumours for the upcoming system are going to become more prevalent in the news as the PS4 becomes older. It's been on store shelves for several years now. So we're going to be discussing the possibility of 2020 as a release date and possibly the shape of the actual hardware as well. Then we're going to move over to Nvidia's GeForce GTX 2000 series. That's right, there's yet another release date rumour that's popped up, but this one's perhaps more interesting than previous ones because we also have some insight as to the potential architecture as well. But before I begin, there's a very quick thing I want to quickly cover, and that is a personal thing. In about 1 month, I will be in America, so I will actually be visiting Seattle, which of course is in Washington. The reason I bring that up is because if anyone does want to meet me, you can email me directly at paul@redgamingtech.com, and we can kind of just do something. I'm not saying it's going to be like a big deal, but, you know, we can go get a coffee and maybe go to a couple of video game stores or whatever and just kind of hang out. So if someone wants to meet up, or, you know, we can get a group of us, do let me know. But it's going to be a cool experience. I'm going to be there once again from the 28th, and I'm going to be in America for about 3 weeks. But I will be doing some vlogging when I'm there. Anyway, let's get back to the news. So an NPD analyst, his name is Matt, I'm hopefully going to pronounce this correctly, Pascal, decided to tell us that he believes that there is no need to currently have a PS5 rush to the market. His exact quote was, "2020 is what I have been forecast. My data tells me that there's no need to do it earlier. I have been surprised before, so I'm interested in this as anyone." And these comments actually very much closely resemble to what Michael Pachter says. Now, sure, Pachter has got some stuff wrong, but the synopsis of his thoughts on the PS5's release date is very simple. He believes that 2020 is a very good release window. 2018 is going to continue to be fairly strong for the PlayStation after all. They're on track now to hit 100 million systems sold. So if they feel that the PS4 continues to have a lot of momentum, they may decide to ride the wave through 2019 and therefore release in 2020. If, however, they feel that perhaps developers are at the point where they've tapped the console to the maximum, or perhaps the Xbox One X is starting to tempt players or developers because of the performance difference between it and the PS4 Pro, then perhaps they'll release a little earlier in 2019. Matt, however, continues by telling us that hardware units are mainly driven by content and pricing strategies. I'm interested to see how the PS4's price point changes over the year, both in base price as well as promotional price. I do expect the PS4 to have a great year of sales, but I do expect it to be down versus 2018, and this of course is in reference to the next year, so 2019. And that somewhat makes sense, right? I think by the time 2019, especially by the tail end of 2019, most people who have wanted a PS4 will have probably bought a PS4. That means that users who perhaps bought a PS4 on launch and then upgraded to the PS4 Pro, those who were tempted to do that probably by the end of 2019 or midpoint of 2019, they probably have done that. And if Sony can reduce the price, well, that's obviously going to tempt in a new wave of customers. But for people who are firmly embedded in the Microsoft ecosystem, or perhaps they've just bought a Switch and perhaps gaming on PC, whatever, then if you've not tempted them by that point, if you've not tempted them by the new God of War, if you've not tempted them by The Last of Us 2, if you've not tempted them by all of the exclusives you've got on your system, then it's very unlikely that anything else is going to make the difference. Now, personally, I'm probably going to release a video on this specifically because I really wanted to examine the technology which is possible for the PS5. But a lot of people are predicting that the PS5 is going to essentially be a streaming device, so you could almost say it's going to be a gateway to like PlayStation Now. Personally, I don't subscribe to this opinion. I do feel eventually games have the probability of going in that direction, so in other words it becomes more game of a service. But my opinion is that for now anyway, Sony don't want to do that. The reason is because, well, I think there's multiple reasons. For one, it's too easy for other companies to essentially get in on the act. At the moment, there's a high barrier to entry to produce consoles, and then of course you've got the licensing fees, which are really where the console developers make most of their money, right? It's the licensing fees as well as the Xbox Lives or the PlayStation Pluses, those type of subscription fees, and obviously peripherals, for example, like headsets, those licensing fees, or perhaps controllers, or whatever else. Those are some of the ways that manufacturers create their cash. Ultimately, if it's just a software as a service almost, where you could almost have things like, for lack of a better thing, you could just have almost like a USB stick, a HDMI stick, for example, and you could basically just plug it in. It's not really that high of a barrier to entry in. That's what the rumours are, by the way, that Google are going to be doing. But whether that's true or not, whether it's going to be almost like a Chromecast device for gaming, who knows? Personally, I think that Sony will want to keep hardware, at least for now. And honestly, there's still a lot of mileage. Once again, I'll do a full analysis on this. Probably before I go to America is my aim. But my personal opinion is that there's a lot of technology that Sony and Microsoft can leverage, and indeed Nintendo if they do decide to release a more updated version of the Switch, which I also believe is a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a more powerful variant of the Switch, which perhaps is capable of perhaps playing games in a higher resolution, either docked or undocked. My personal opinion is that Sony and Microsoft will continue to leverage AMD's IPs. They could especially go with 12nm refresh, with possibility of Vega, or they could stick to AMD, wait for 2020, and then possibly go with 7nm. There's some theories behind that, and whether they feel that they're going to get decent enough yields, what the potential is in terms of, you know, the chip customizations and all of that type of jazz, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually a thing. And honestly speaking, there needs to be a fairly decent generational leap. We can argue all day whether you want to buy an Xbox One X, because Microsoft admitted themselves that they were somewhat downtrodden by the success of the PlayStation. They admitted that they made a lot of screw-ups with the Xbox One, which, to be fair, I will grant the team over at Microsoft, that's quite ballsy to admit in public. A lot of companies wouldn't have admitted that. Even though it was obvious that happened, I give kudos to the Xbox guys to actually admit that. And they said they just, you know, the folks in charge at the time were not listening to gamers. And they got a bit of a kicking. And obviously now they've got an exclusivity problem as well, which they are trying to address. But one cannot argue that the console itself, the Xbox One X, is very powerful. It has a few weak points. In my opinion, the CPU perhaps needed to be an additional 15-20% faster in an ideal world, but it does have a lot of legs. I guess my point being that if you were to release a console that's, let's say, 30, 40, 50% faster than the Xbox One X as Sony, it's not really going to feel like a generational leap. It's more going to be like, oh, that's kind of nice, but not that big of a deal. My personal opinion is the system needs to be substantially faster, perhaps 2 to 3 times, which is obviously very difficult to achieve with the current levels of technology. That's one of the reasons I don't think we're going to see it released in 2018. Now, yes, of course, they could easily do that. There's GPUs available on the PC, there's GPUs available right now which are considerably faster than the Xbox One X. Unfortunately, they also have a price point which is not really downscalable to a console. So when you factor in other things like memory prices currently, and you also factor in little things like, you know, the cases to actually put everything in, the cooling solutions, the actual CPU and the rest of the SoC, you know, just everything really that goes into making a console, I wouldn't be surprised if 2019 at the earliest is probably the release date, if they are a full system. If it's more of a streaming device, then sure, they could release it tomorrow technically, but I believe it's going to be a full system. So my personal opinion, and do feel free to comment in the, well, comments, that was terrible, feel free to let us know what you think. But anyway, let's move over to Nvidia. So there has been a few rumours concerning Nvidia's release date. One which popped up thanks to PC Games N and some other websites which covered a source over at Massdrop, they said that we won't really be seeing the new GeForces launched until Q3. However, there has been an update from the website Tweaktown, and it's a rather fascinating read. It's quite a short one, but they are citing well-placed industry sources, of course, because they're always well-placed. But anyway, they believe, this was based upon a telephone call, that Nvidia will be launching their new GeForce series at GTC 2018. Furthermore, according to industry sources, some of these from Reuters, some of them from Tweaktown, there's going to be 2 variants of this, and I kind of predicted this would happen back in the day, but here we go. So there's going to be 2 variants. There's going to be Ampere and there's going to be Turing. So there's going to be a clear differential between these 2 GPUs. The difference between them is one is going to be focused on gaming, one is going to be focused on mining. So what this potentially means is that Nvidia will essentially block crypto mining on Ampere. Now, whether it blocks it literally, as in it will not run, in other words, it detects the workload perhaps on the drivers, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hack or workaround with that, or maybe they're just going to bake it somehow into the BIOS, I don't know. Or perhaps it's going to be so crippled, I don't know how they're going to do that, but let's just say it's so crippled, you might as well not bother. So instead, what they're going to do is use Turing, which of course is named after Alan Turing. Alan Turing, you might remember, is the highly influential, he was highly influential in the development of theoretical computer science. And he was, well known for cryptography and very important during the Second World War to understanding messages from the Germans. But anywho, that's beside the point. So Ampere is going to, at least according to these rumours, and I don't know how true they are, is going to be more of a refresh over Pascal. Now, what a refresh means is down to your interpretation. It's going to be an evolutionary step, I suppose. So what this means essentially is that Nvidia are making a 2-pronged attack. They're attacking the gaming market by telling gamers very simply, we're on your side, we're releasing 2 different versions of the card, never the twain shall meet. If you are going to game, you will not see supply issues, at least from our cards, because of mining. The only caveat with that, of course, and you're going to say exactly the same thing, but dude, memory. That's true. But I do suspect memory is going to start to alleviate in the next several months. And that might also be where the rumours that, you know, GPU prices will start to get better by Q3. So perhaps what those rumours were yesterday, where people were pegging them to be the release date of a card, they were somewhat accurate, yes, because at least according to the rumours that we're seeing from Tweaktown, according to their sources, the GPUs are not going to be on store shelves during GTC. It's going to be a little bit later on. It's going to be perhaps early May. So what's going to happen, obviously you're going to get the rush from the gamers, but then perhaps GPUs are going to start to become cheaper to produce because more memory manufacturers are going to increase the sheer number of cards available. Sorry, the sheer number of RAM available. DRAM products are going to become cheaper to produce and perhaps more prevalent on store shelves, therefore alleviating shortage throughout the chain. I don't know. This means that if you're mining, you're going to be basically fighting to get the Turing cards, which means that, you know, if a miner wants to buy, you know, 500 Turing, whatever the hell they're going to be called, well, good luck to you. That, you know, that's for you and the other miners to fight. For gaming, of course, it's going to be less of a big deal. I can kind of see how this would work from a gaming perspective, because yes, the market for gaming is, you know, there's certainly more customers when it comes to gaming, but gamers don't buy more than 1 GPU typically, maybe 2. You know, if you're going SLI, you probably buy 2. Whereas miners, they'll buy 5, 10, 15, 20 cards in some instances. I mean, if you were to go to Google Images, feel free to do it, and type in, like, you know, high-end mining setup or home high-end mining setup or whatever, and the solutions people are coming up with is absolutely bonkers. So I can certainly see where this would perhaps make some sense. With all of that said, hopefully you have enjoyed the video, my friends. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.